Yu Menglong's song did not arrive loudly. It slipped into the world quietly, as if it did not want attention. At first, it sounded like a simple melody, soft, almost unfinished. People played it in the background without listening closely. That was the mistake. Because the song was not meant to be heard casually, it was meant to be understood later. In the days before his death in this story, Yu Menlong spent long nights alone. Those close to him noticed the change. He stopped explaining himself. He stopped arguing. Instead, he wrote, not messages, not statements, lyrics. He treated the song like a container, a place to hide things that could not be spoken openly. The opening verse sounded innocent, a reflection on time and distance, a voice describing the feeling of standing at a window watching lights move below. But listeners later realized the window was not a metaphor. It matched the apartment layout already discussed in earlier events. The angle, the height, even the direction of the streetlights aligned. That was the first clue. The chorus repeated a line about borrowed air and borrowed time. At first, it sounded poetic. Later, it felt precise. Borrowed suggested something temporary, something watched, something conditional. It echoed earlier whispers about monitoring and timelines that were never meant to extend. People who revisited the song after everything happened felt a chill. Not because of what was said, but because of what was missing. There was no future tense. Every line existed in the present or the past. Hope was referenced only as something already spent. Plans were spoken of as memories rather than intentions. It was as if Yu Menlong had already accepted an ending while the world still believed the story was ongoing. In the second verse, he mentioned a road that does not appear on any map. Fans initially assumed it was symbolic. But those who knew his routines recognized it as an abandoned service road near the edge of the city, a place connected to earlier sightings and later footage within the story. The song named it without naming it. That was the pattern. Nothing direct, nothing actionable, just enough truth hidden inside art so it could survive. The bridge of the song was the most unsettling part. The music stripped back. His voice dropped, almost a whisper. He sang about numbers written in dust and hands that erased them before morning. Listeners now connect this to the list that surfaced later. The list people denied existed. The list that kept appearing and disappearing across systems. Dust does not resist erasure. Neither do digital records when pressure is applied. The final verse changed tone. It did not beg. It did not accuse. It sounded like a farewell without saying goodbye. He thanked unnamed listeners for hearing him, even if they never understood. He said truth does not always need witnesses, only time. That line became the most quoted. What made the song feel like a goodbye was not sadness. It was clarity. There was no confusion in the delivery. No searching, just calm resolution, the kind that comes when someone has stopped negotiating with outcomes. In earlier stories, we saw panic, we saw flight, we saw chaos after the collapse. This song sits on the other side of that chaos. It feels like the moment before when everything is already decided but not yet visible. People who worked on the recording later shared that Yu Menlong insisted on keeping imperfections. Breath, sounds, slight timing slips. He refused heavy editing. He said it needed to sound real. Real was dangerous. Hidden inside the melody were pauses that felt intentional, long enough to be uncomfortable. Those pauses lined up with known gaps in communication from that period. Moments when phones went silent, messages stopped, schedules broke, silence as a marker. The song was released without promotion, no interviews, no explanation. It existed, and then it waited. After his death in the story, it returned with weight. Listeners began mapping lyrics to events already covered in earlier chapters. The apartment, the flight, the list, the watching, the sense of being inside a system that moves without consent. The song did not reveal new facts. It revealed intent. That is why it matters. Art can say what testimony cannot. It can survive denial because it does not demand belief. It only asks to be heard. Yu Menlong did not leave a manifesto. He left a melody. One that grows heavier the more context surrounds it. One that rhymes with every event that followed. The neighbors running, the closed case, the rushed conclusions, the absence of answers, all of it echoes back into the song like a loop. When people say it was a goodbye, they do not mean to life alone. They mean goodbye to the version of truth that could still be negotiated. The song does not accuse anyone. It does not name power. It does not point fingers. That restraint is what makes it powerful, because it assumes the listener will connect the dots, and once dots are connected, they cannot be unseen. In the world of this story, the song remains online unchanged. It has not been removed. That alone raises questions. Perhaps because removing it would confirm its weight. Perhaps because art is harder to silence than statements. The song waits. It continues to wait, just as truth often does. Not loud, not forceful, patient. After the song spread quietly through private playlists and late-night headphones, something unexpected happened. People stopped arguing about what it meant and started watching how others reacted to it. That shift changed everything. Inside offices where decisions were usually swift meetings grew longer. The song was never mentioned by name, yet it hovered in the room like a temperature change. Someone would pause mid-sentence. Someone else would clear their throat. A third person would suggest moving on to the next agenda item even though the first was unfinished. The melody had become a presence. A week after the song gained traction, an internal media review was announced. Officially, it focused on content tone and narrative responsibility. Unofficially, it was about control. Certain keywords were flagged for sensitivity. Certain story angles were labeled unhelpful. The instructions were vague enough to deny intent, but precise enough to be felt. Creators noticed immediately. One producer later admitted that a segment was cut, not because it was inaccurate, but because it sounded too familiar. The familiarity was dangerous. It reminded listeners of the song without referencing it. That was the fear. Around the same time, a small independent radio host played the song in full during a late broadcast. No commentary, no framing, just the track and silence afterward. The broadcast was replayed thousands of times, not because of the music, but because of what followed. Nothing. The silence became the message. Listeners reported the same sensation, a feeling that the song was not ending, but handing something off, like a relay baton passed to whoever was paying attention. Then came the first visible crack. A previously sealed timeline document was quietly revised. The revision did not change conclusions, it changed phrasing. Words like immediate and conclusive were softened. Language shifted from certainty to assessment. To most readers, it looked insignificant. To those who understood process, it was massive. Certainty had retreated. Behind-the-scenes conversations became more fragmented. People stopped using phones for certain topics. Meetings were split into smaller groups. Responsibilities were reassigned under the banner of efficiency. Efficiency is often how fear disguises itself. The song continued circulating. Fans began dissecting it line by line, not aggressively, gently. They matched lyrics to moments already known. They noticed how certain phrases aligned with earlier events in the story. The apartment silence, the running neighbors, the vanishing records, the closed case that never felt closed. The song did not contradict the official story. It existed parallel to it. That made it impossible to attack. An attempt was made to recontextualize it. An article described the song as purely artistic and unrelated to real events within the story. The article quoted unnamed sources emphasizing coincidence. The effort backfired. Coincidence requires randomness. The song felt intentional. A particularly striking moment came when a former collaborator shared a memory. He described Yu Menglong insisting that one lyric remain unchanged despite suggestions to make it more hopeful. When asked why, Yu Menglong replied that hope would confuse the message. That line spread widely. Hope would confuse the message. It reframed everything. The song was not despairing, it was precise. Precision is unsettling because it implies planning. Planning implies knowledge. Knowledge implies awareness beyond what was acknowledged publicly. As the weeks passed, the case remained officially closed but unofficially active. People began requesting older materials not directly related to the event. Contracts, emails, scheduling logs, everything surrounding the perimeter. Perimeters are where patterns hide. A subtle power struggle emerged. Those pushing forward used the language of transparency. Those resisting used the language of stability. Both claimed responsibility. Only one sounded defensive. The most cinematic moment came quietly. A public building hosted a memorial exhibition unrelated to the case. One room featured a looping ambient soundtrack. Visitors recognized it instantly. The melody was not identical to Yu Menglong's song, but it shared its structure. The same pauses, the same unresolved progression. No credit was given. People stood longer than expected. Some closed their eyes, some cried without understanding why. Art had begun echoing art. That echo could not be stopped. In private, someone finally asked the question no one wanted to voice. What if the song was not a message to the public, but a record for the future? What if it was meant to be understood only when enough pieces were already visible? That idea shifted perception. The song stopped being evidence. It became a timestamp. The industry response grew more rigid. Public appearances were reduced, statements became shorter, language grew sanitized, risk avoidance replaced expression. Meanwhile, the audience leaned in closer. The irony was complete. Every attempt to suppress momentum gave it shape. The final event of this phase arrived without announcement. A long, dormant account posted a single sentence quoting a lyric from the song. No explanation, no context. Within minutes, the post was gone. Screenshots remained. The account was never recovered. That disappearance mattered more than the post itself, because it confirmed attention. And attention means relevance. The song had done what no investigation could. It changed behavior. It altered tone. It exposed pressure points without accusation. In the world of this story, Yu Menlong did not speak after his death. He did not need to. His song continued the conversation with perfect timing. Not loud, not confrontational, just present enough to remind everyone that some truths do not surface through force. They surface through resonance. And resonance, once established, does not fade. It waits, just like the truth does. As the song continued to circulate, something subtle but powerful began to happen. The focus shifted away from Yu Menglong himself and toward the reactions of those around him. Silence was no longer empty. It was active. It started answering questions without speaking. Behind closed doors, a new pattern emerged. Invitations were declined. Appearances were postponed. Familiar faces stopped appearing together in public. People who once shared platforms now avoided being photographed in the same frame. The distance felt intentional. Observers noticed that statements grew shorter, but rehearsals grew longer. Inside one planning session, an assistant played the song quietly before a meeting began. No one asked them to stop it. No one acknowledged it either. When the song ended, the room stayed quiet for several seconds longer than necessary. Then, someone cleared their throat and changed the subject. That pause became a moment people remembered. Meanwhile, fans uncovered another detail. The song tempo matched the pacing of Yu Menglong earlier unreleased demos, except for one section where the rhythm slowed dramatically. That slowdown matched the date when communication around him abruptly changed in previous chapters of the story. It felt deliberate, like a musical marker placed in time. Music had become a map. Another interesting event surfaced when a cultural forum removed a discussion thread analyzing the song. No explanation was given. Users reposted the discussion elsewhere. It was removed again. The third repost stayed up, but comments were disabled. Disabling comments does not stop interpretation. It confirms sensitivity. Public interest grew quieter but deeper. Fewer posts, longer reads, more listening than speaking. People were no longer trying to solve the case. They were absorbing it. Then came an unexpected broadcast. A late-night documentary about artistic legacies aired with no mention of Yu Menglong. Yet one segment discussed how creators sometimes leave messages not for the present, but for the moment when context catches up. The narrator said some works are written forward in time. Viewers understood immediately. The song was not chasing attention anymore. Attention was chasing it. Inside the industry, protocols tightened. Legal language replaced emotional language. Conversation shifted from what happened to how it was perceived. That shift revealed priorities. Perception matters when certainty is fragile. The most telling scene unfolded at a private listening event. The song played again in a room full of people who knew too much to relax. No one checked their phones. No one spoke. When it ended, a few people nodded as if acknowledging an unspoken agreement. Nothing needed to be said. The agreement was already written into behavior. Yu Menglong's absence had become a reference point. Every controlled statement felt heavier when compared to his unfiltered melody. Power sounded strained. Art sounded calm. That contrast lingered. By the end of this chapter, the case remained closed on paper but open in memory. The song continued to do what investigations could not. It connected moments. It aligned reactions. It exposed pressure without accusation. Truth was no longer demanding entry. It had already entered quietly and taken a seat. And from there, it watched everything unfold.